everyone. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Today we're going to be looking into a really sensitive topic, but something I think that really needs to be talked about more: domestic abuse in the UK Malayali community. That a record number of domestic violence cases were reported among Malayalis in Leicester in the UK. So what factors are contributing to this disturbing trend?
Yeah, so one of the sources goes right into a really chilling case from 2013 in Chadwell Heath.
Okay.
A Malayali woman and her 2 daughters and the husband were found dead.
Oh, wow.
It turned out to be a really horrific case of domestic violence that escalated to murder-suicide.
That's awful.
Yeah.
It really highlights just how serious of an issue this is and how fast it can escalate. But did anything change after that tragedy? I mean, did it bring more awareness? Or was it just brushed under the rug?
It seems that it did bring more attention to domestic violence within Indian families in the UK.
Okay.
The document, though, also points out that the challenges still exist. You know, it seems like there was more scrutiny on reports after that case from Indian families.
Yeah.
But that the systemic issues themselves haven't really been addressed.
It's like shining a light on a problem doesn't fix the problem.
Exactly.
So what are some of the underlying causes that this document identifies?
Well, one of the things that comes up again and again is this concept of provocation from both sides. It seems like it's kind of painting a picture of husbands who expect total obedience.
Oh, wow.
And wives who sometimes involve their mothers when expressing their displeasure, leading naturally to conflict.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, is the expectation of total obedience really fair in today's world?
Wow.
How can you have healthy communication and respect if one person is expected to be totally obedient to the other person?
Absolutely. You're right. It seems like there's a big clash between some of these expectations.
Yeah.
And the realities of living in a more egalitarian society.
Okay.
And especially when you think about all the complexities of immigration and cultural adaptation on top of it.
Absolutely. So what happens when these conflicts escalate to the point of police involvement?
Well, the document highlights a troubling pattern that happens.
Yeah.
Often when things cool down, the wife ends up retracting her statement, maybe out of fear or maybe out of a desire to protect her husband.
Yeah.
But this can backfire in a sense because her credibility is questioned, and it can really weaken her position in future disputes.
That's heartbreaking because the system that's supposed to help is now working against her.
Yeah, it's a catch-22.
So you're saying that this cycle of escalation and retraction ends up eroding the woman's credibility.
Exactly.
Okay. The source also brings up another factor that I found really interesting: financial control. It seems that when the wife holds more financial power, maybe she owns the house or makes more money, tensions can rise. The document even talks about husbands using phrases like "my house" during arguments.
Yeah.
Which feels like it would just make everything so much worse.
Well, absolutely, because it can create resentment and,
Yeah.
lead to verbal abuse in some cases, or even in some rare cases, lead to physical assault.
So it's like this toxic mix of cultural expectations and money worries. And the source also mentions that even menopause can be a contributing factor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it seems that some husbands don't really understand what their wives are going through during that time.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a time of hormonal changes, physical discomfort,
Yeah.
emotional fluctuations.
Absolutely.
And it's not surprising that that could exacerbate any existing tensions in the relationship.
So we have this very complex interplay of cultural expectations, financial pressures,
Right.
even biological factors like menopause.
Right.
And I know this is important to point out, but these are contributing factors, not excuses.
Right.
Understanding the context is important, but it's also really important to hold abusers accountable for their actions.
Absolutely. We cannot excuse abusive behavior.
Makes me think of another case from Birmingham back in 2017.
Okay.
A woman in her late 30s suffered years of physical and emotional abuse.
Oh, gosh.
Her husband controlled her finances and isolated her from her support system.
Wow.
And it wasn't until she finally found the courage to reach out for help that she was able to escape that nightmare.
And that's a good reminder that it's so important to have culturally sensitive support systems available.
Yeah.
And resources tailored to the specific needs of the South Asian and Kerala communities.
It's about creating a space where they feel understood and empowered to seek help.
Exactly.
The document explicitly states that this announcement from the police should be taken seriously by Malayalis.
Wow.
It's a call to action. We can't ignore this. We need to talk about it. We need to raise awareness and support those who are suffering in silence.
I completely agree.
The fact that it's happening so much means that there are a lot of people who are suffering in silence.
Exactly.
And so we need to do something about it.
And speaking of action, There's a proposed bill in the UK Parliament called the Domestic Abuse Safe Leave Bill.
Okay, what does that do?
Well, it proposes providing 10 days of paid leave for victims of domestic violence.
Oh, wow.
This would give them the time to seek help to recover and to start rebuilding their lives without the stress of financial insecurity.
So it's acknowledging the impact of domestic violence and offering tangible support.
Exactly.
Which is huge because it's telling people that we see you, we hear you, and we're here to help.
Absolutely.
So what about the perspective from inside the Malayali community itself?
Okay.
The document mentions Sojan Joseph, who's a member of parliament,
Okay.
who's been getting tons of calls from distressed parents whose children in Leicester are in prison because of domestic violence cases. So it sounds like there's a real need for awareness within the community itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's been very vocal about that. He's saying that a lot of newcomers are unaware of UK laws and support systems,
Right.
which is leaving them more vulnerable to these situations.
So it's not just knowing your rights, it's knowing that there is support out there
Exactly.
and that it's okay to ask for it.
Exactly. Right. And we need to remember that domestic abuse can happen to anyone regardless of gender.
Absolutely.
And what's even more encouraging is that there's a growing movement within the Malayali community itself to challenge the stigma surrounding domestic abuse and create a culture of support and zero tolerance.
So it's coming from within.
It is. And we can't forget the role that men play in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, men need to be allies in this. They need to challenge toxic masculinity and promote healthy relationships.
It's about men saying that this is not okay and we need to do something about it.
Exactly. And holding each other accountable.
Yeah.
And creating a culture of respect and equality.
It's a good reminder that this is not just a women's issue. We all have a role to play in ending domestic abuse,
Absolutely.
regardless of gender background or beliefs. And we haven't even talked about the effects this has on children.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. The trauma of witnessing these situations can have lifelong effects. It can affect their emotional well-being, their relationships, even their sense of safety and security.
So organizations like the NSPCC are really important.
Absolutely. They're doing amazing work to support those children and hopefully break the cycle of violence.
We've talked about so many layers to this issue, and it's clear there's no easy fix.
Yeah.
But seeing so many people and organizations working to address this gives me hope that we can create a safer future.
I agree. And you know what else is really encouraging?
What's that?
We're seeing more and more collaboration between policymakers, advocates, and community organizations.
So working together.
Exactly. And this brings us to a really important question. How can we as individuals contribute to this effort?
It's a big question, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, it's easy to feel kind of overwhelmed by this problem, but even small actions can make a difference, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is a big question. How can we as individuals actually make a difference when we're talking about something so complex? It's easy to just feel totally powerless in these situations.
Yeah. But even small actions can create change.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's just about a shift in our mindset. Maybe we can't solve the whole problem,
Right.
but we can contribute to changing things.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with awareness. The more we understand about domestic abuse, the more we can recognize the signs and challenge those harmful norms.
It all goes back to that question we asked earlier. How can we help end domestic violence?
Right. It's a question we should always be asking ourselves.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing thing.
And to anyone listening who might be going through this or knows someone who is, please remember you're not alone.
Absolutely.
There are people out there who care. There are resources. And there's a community that wants to help.
Don't suffer in silence. Reach out.
You deserve a life free from violence and fear.
And even in those really dark times,
Yeah.
there's still hope. Hope for healing, hope for change, and hope for a future where everyone can live with dignity, respect, and love.
That's a really great message to end on. But thank you so much for joining us for this really important conversation.
It was my pleasure.